Sometimes there's funny stuff left behind too, though. It's not always like ruins.
Yeah. So like, there was a house in Park Ridge.
Here we go. All right, guys, welcome back to House Hacking with Halperin. Good to be back. Super excited about our special guest today. We have none other than James Bellavia. James, very similar to myself, wears many different hats. So I'm going to try to name all of them. Tell me if I miss any. Wildly successful Compass broker, real estate investor, owner and operator of a property management company, somewhat of a developer, or I hate to use the term flip. What's a better?
Flipper.
I feel like flipper got like a bad connotation recently, and you're better than that.
Yeah, redevelopment of single family homes.
Yeah. Did I miss anything?
Property manager.
Yeah, I said owner operator of a property management company. But how many doors do you currently manage?
I own and operate about 80 doors.
And the interesting part about your doors is most of them fall in different. We're talking about 80 houses, right? Or at least
some single family homes. So I got into the business by buying single family homes. And then we've kind of left that arena as interest rates have increased. Mm. So the base of the portfolio is a single family home portfolio. It's about 15 or 16 single family homes. And then we started buying 2 flats, 3 flats, 4 flats. Then we kind of got out of financing arena of it being considered a single family home or a 2 to 4 unit. So once you go to 5 units, you get a different type of financing.
I just wanted to know how many different, at least 30 it sounds like, pieces of property that you're responsible for.
It's probably about 30.
30. And growing. Which, do you sleep at night?
Yeah, very well.
That's good. That's because you're a pro. I think one of the number one questions we get, or at least that I get, and I'm sure you do too, from first-time real estate investors, people, you folks out there are looking to buy and operate a 2-unit, a 3-unit. Can you help me manage this? How do I manage this? What do I do? And we're talking about one roof, one building. You have 80 doors, 30 plus pieces of property.
Since I manage my own properties, I got to make the decisions for myself.
Yeah.
Right. So it's much easier to manage for yourself than to manage for someone else. There might be a different answer for, as if I was third-party property management, I might make a decision differently. Since it's my own property, I can make a decision like, oh, you're not happy? Move out.
Is that ever a negative? The fact that you're so personally involved? Do you ever think, oh man, third-party property manager would have made a better decision than I just made?
In the very beginning, I was way too emotionally attached to the collection of rents.
Yeah, well, that could be an emotional topic.
And so now at this point, I've kind of detached myself from the emotional part behind the business.
Yeah.
Right? Because there are going to be non-paying tenants, right? And that's just part of the business.
Let's take this back to our first-time investors, our house hackers, so to speak. A lot of them, when they ask us, hey, should I manage this property myself? I don't want to pay 10% to someone to manage my property. Or the flip side might be, oh my God, I have no idea how to manage my property. What do we want our official stance on? Self-manage your property or outsource?
If you're living in a 2-flat, for example, it should be really easy to manage the property. If you used a real estate broker like ourselves to purchase the 2-flat, I would lean on that real estate broker for their vendor list.
Brilliant.
Right?
Yep.
So an appliance repair person, right? A property manager or a property management company is a list of vendors that the manager has a working relationship with.
Yep.
So, and because that vendor gets volume, they're always going to be willing to go on Christmas morning or go on Christmas Eve, for example.
Yep.
Right? It's much more difficult for an individual to create that relationship, but it is not that difficult to manage a property that you are living in. You would manage it as if you were owning a condo.
Some of the downsides?
Some of the downsides of managing your own property?
It's personal. It's personal as hell.
It's personal.
I mean, I could only imagine going and trying to collect rent that's 5 days overdue from my tenant below me after I just had a late night gathering the night before and knew they could hear. You know what I mean? I feel like you're starting to intermingle. Hey, I'm your boss. I'm your landlord, right? You owe me money. Oh, but my doorknob's broken, or you guys were walking around late at night.
But there's also advantages. Like if you're a little handy, the basement unit can't figure out why their dishwasher won't work. It's 8 o'clock at night. You could walk down the stairs and you can try and help them problem solve. So
it sounds miserable to me. I got a guy for that.
Yeah, but then you have a guy for it, but he might not be able to come the next day, right? If you're living in the building and it's something simple that has come up in the past, you could go down there and fix it right away. At the same time, it's a little awkward. Like I live in a 3-flat.
Mm-hmm. You did house hack, right?
I currently house hack.
How did you do it? How has it been? Would you do it again? Would you recommend it?
Yeah, so to back up, I bought a 2-bed, 2-bath condo in Lincoln Park, and we were living there. It was great. At the time, rates were on the lower end.
Yeah.
We were paying about $3,200, $3,300 a month for a $500,000 apartment. And at this point, I had started to purchase investment properties. And my mindset was, if I'm going to do it with partners, I might as well try and do it myself.
Sure.
And then offset some of the expenses of shelter, right? So my 2-bed, 2-bath was costing me $3,200. Can I go buy something? And the most important thing to us was live in the neighborhood that we wanted to live in.
Right.
And be able to then offset the total costs against the rents.
Yep.
So that's what I went out and looked for. We also knew that we wanted to try and offset the total expenses and live in the best unit, which sometimes becomes very difficult.
Sure.
Typically, you have to live in the worst unit.
Right.
Because the other units are the higher rent amounts.
Right.
And so my fiance now and I started looking. We wanted to live in Roscoe Village. And the lots, the multifamilies in that neighborhood are a little more pricey, so it is more difficult to have the income offset the mortgage, right? That's a functionality of adjusting down payment too. So that's something we looked at. We didn't use one of these 3.5% down FHA, first-time home buyers, or 5% or 10%. I essentially adjusted the down payment. I did 25% down.
So you bought it as if it was a strict rental investment property.
As an investment property. And we've been there 5 years now. And over the last 5 years, we've increased rents. And we're at a point where now I live on the top floor in the best unit for basically free.
Really interesting strategy. So James, when he did his house hack, we talk a lot about one of the huge advantages of house hacking. You could come up with a lesser down payment on a property where typically, if that was just an investment property, where typically you'd have to come up with 25% down if it was strictly an investment property. James did the opposite. So he decided to put that 25% down, even though you were owner occupying it. Reason being, correct me if I'm wrong,
to manipulate the mortgage payment.
Yes. So what was more important to James was keeping that monthly payment and the offset of the rent lower, and you were willing to sacrifice some savings.
Correct.
Which I think is great. And I think that should appeal to a lot of the folks that are watching today. I feel like we have so many friends and clients that they may have built up a savings, right? Or gotten a gift or whatever, and that money sits in their bank account. It's great. It makes you feel good. Their daily lives are more affected by monthly budgets. So why not put some more money into that down payment, into that home, and feel great month to month when...
Absolutely. You have to back into your outlook, right? Like when I bought this property, I was thinking to myself, I'm going to own this thing 30 years, right? This is going to be my primary resident until it is too small to live in, right? So what significant event could happen next, right? Marriage. I want to have children. We have 3 bedrooms, 2 of them are offices. So at some point, we're probably going to grow out of this space, and it no longer is the primary resident. But I wanted to, when I purchased it, to make sure that this property was never sold when I went to buy the next one as a primary resident.
Okay.
So then what happens when you own or occupy is you can get 30-year fixed mortgage rates. And on a lot of investment properties that are owned, for example, by an LLC, you get 5-year balloons or 7-year balloons.
Yep.
So owning this property, I know that for the next 30 years, my payment is going to be fixed at the time, low rates. And then this property becomes paid off in 30 years. It starts to do a lot of things. You have a lot of equity. You could rent the unit I live in, and you could start to use that cash flow towards paying one of your children's rent in college.
Yep. You make it a true vehicle that works for you however
set
you...
and forget.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, congrats.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, James, much like our previous guest, Chris, I would say they are two of the most analytically gifted people I've met. And I genuinely mean that. You can analyze, reanalyze. You have spreadsheets. Sometimes you don't even need them. I could just tell you a problem I'm having and you could work it out. So I refuse to let us talk about anything with analytics. It's just too boring. So I'm going to take you out of your comfort zone a little bit. James, operating all these doors, I know for a fact, because I hear about a lot of them, you have a lot of really funny stories. Dig deep. What's some of the craziest stuff? Give me something that's not going to offend anyone or ruffle too many feathers, but just give me some of the stuff you come across owning and operating 80 different rental units.
I think without really telling a story, I think that the biggest
cop out.
I think the biggest thing is when you purchase properties in the intention to rehab them, which is what I do. You see a lot of living conditions that are talked about, but probably not viewed.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's probably one of the biggest shockers for me is you walk into an abandoned property and you say to yourself, oh man, someone was living like this.
Yeah.
How were they doing that? We don't know the whole back end story of their financial situation or how their luck ran out.
Sure.
But I think that really is.
And sometimes it's downright sad, right? I know the premise of my question was funny, but I've been in that I've walked thousands, I think, of vacant, abandoned houses, buildings in all neighborhoods, by the way. That scene does not discriminate to a certain neighborhood. I've done down the block here in Bucktown, walked a place where I was stepping over stuff you don't want to step over. And you're right. You're like, how did people live here? You sort of, don't you kind of drive home at the end of the day, like feeling a little bit more grateful?
For sure.
Sometimes there's funny stuff left behind too, though. It's not always like ruins.
Yeah. So like there was a house in Park Ridge.
Here we go.
And I was working for this investor. He was buying at auction, and we walked into the house. And when you buy at auction, once you get possession of the house, whatever is there, right? It becomes the new owners. And there was a stack of, it probably were, maybe 7 to 10 stacks, 50 each, and it was some guy's 80s and 90s Playboy collection. And it's like, what do you do with that?
Standard reading material.
Standard. But like stuff like that, it's like, you walk in, it's very shocking, and it was left behind.
Yeah.
It's in a way, it's kind of like those storage or TV shows, right? You never know what you're going to find once you walk into the property.
Yeah. And a lot of times it's fun. I did one time, and there's a story behind it, but have you ever done like do we want to call it like an estate sale or something where
No, I've never done that.
I did it one time where I hired a third-party company. I bought a house. It was in like the Auburn Gresham neighborhood, and it was just low. It was a hoarder house. But you never know if some of that stuff looks really cool. Like you never know. What if this thing's expensive? What if you ever find a safe?
Never found a safe.
I found safes. I've been like, if no one's claiming it and I buy the house, I'm checking what's inside the safe.
I got a bocce ball set once.
See, that's fun. My safes are always empty. There was one time, man, I took like the stuff from the house and I was, it must have been in a really good mood, sentimental. And I was like, I think I could like re-gift some of this stuff. I'm going to take this table, and I like brought it to my own house. And like 1 week later, you're like, what the fuck was I thinking?
It's a lot of time. And the further you get into this business, you realize that, you know, it's much easier just to like press a button and have the contractor trash it out.
Throw it out. Yeah.
You know, whatever they find when they're there, you know.
I recently bought a Greystone in Logan Square. Beautiful building on Albany, quiet little windy street. And in the lead up to the purchase, I was lucky enough to meet the longtime owner 4, 5, 6 times. And I'm sure you've dealt with this. Those meetings are never 5-minute conversations. No. They're 2+ hours every time. Thankfully, because the dude knew everything about Logan Square. He used to own a bike store, knew every neighbor, every detail. Unbelievably interesting. And at the top of this amazing Greystone with all this character and arches and all this cool stuff was like, you could tell it was like a 30-year-old like Schwinn red bicycle. He put it on top of like the overhang. So I was like, the first thing I told my contractors, I was like, do not touch that bike. Like, I am going to own this building forever, and that bike is going to be there, and I'm going to invite.
Is it still there?
Can I get to the end of the story? Day 1 of demo, bike is gone. So I agree with you. You think of let's save the stained glass, and let's. Mm-hmm. It's great in theory.
You know, I think that stuff is great for the TV shows.
Which, by the way, we're trying to get one.
You see a lot of that stuff. You know, Windy City Rehab. She does a lot of save the glass.
My construction company's on that show right now.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. We're working with a family doing shameless plug.
Shameless plug.
I don't get in front of the camera, but our Jorge, who everyone knows by now, he's getting a lot of TV time.
When does that air?
I don't know. We have to finish the project first. So it's crazy because it's an actual project, and then they just come for occasional video shoots. Mm-hmm. And she drops in like a celebrity and leaves, and then we have to go back to just being contractors. Okay, so James, I came across a really young, smart, successful investor in Westtown. Must have been 5 or 6 years ago. Him, his brother, and a couple friends were all going in together to buy a 3-unit building, beautiful brick building. I don't know their exact structure, but they were operating as if they were a full partnership corporation. But in reality, then you'd find out, they're 4 buddies, just, 2 brothers and 2 buddies just going out, having beers, and then thought of house hacking together. So that's something we're hearing more and more of, like 2 buddies or, these little groups that'll sort of all buy into a building, live on different floors, and all of a sudden what was an unattainable price tag on a piece of real estate becomes house hacking.
Are you just paying rent then in an apartment with your 4 buddies? Someone's living on the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th floor, and you're sharing the mortgage payment. You're not reducing your costs by offsetting rent. Someone that doesn't have interest in the property, you're paying principal down, and the property's probably appreciating. But to me, house hacking means that you're living for less. Let's say that the monthly payment's $4,000, everyone's paying $1,000, but the rent is $1,500. So there is some savings there.
Yeah. And let's say again, it's in the neighborhood you want to live in.
You got to know your partner's financial situations too, then, because the roof needs to be done. You don't want to be trying to collect the 1/4 from your friend that lives on the 1st floor that maybe has no savings, just lost his job,
and also says, "Hey, I live on the 1st floor. I don't care about the roof." Right?
Right. They don't have that 3rd bedroom above the front.
Let's back this all the way up. So, in reality, if James and I, or these folks, I'm sure this is what they did in the story I just told. If we were going to do this, we would first jump on Cyber Drive, Illinois. We would create an LLC. It would be James and Joey LLC, Property Brothers, House Hackers. We would then create what's called an operating agreement. And this is if you do it the right way, right? where we would specify percentage interest in that LLC. Let's do it right now. 50-50?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. It's the way it should always be. We would define our interest. We would then add in any other language that we feel needs to be stated up front, right? All expenses are to be paid 50-50. What else could possibly go in like an operating agreement? It's a lot of standard mumbo jumbo, but
Buyouts.
Yeah. Let's say James, congrats on being engaged.
Thank you.
Shout out Mags. Let's say James wanted to leave the building before I did. How's that going to work, right? You need money for your wedding, right?
Or if one person wants to sell and one person wants to stay in the building.
That comes down to voting rights, right? And that all goes in an operating agreement?
Yes. You can define, any term in an operating agreement.
So this is a conversation that if we were having 6 years ago, I would not have said anything I just said. I'd be like, yeah, James and Joey are just going to get together, $50K for you, $50K for me. We're going to make money. Well, oh, you want to move out? It's not a big deal, man. Just, you'll rent it out. We'll talk about it.
So I think that it becomes the most beneficial when you take advantage of the lending side of the business. And what does that mean? The most important thing is fixed money, right? If you can get fixed money, 30-year fixed money on an investment property, you don't have to touch it for the next 30 years. A lot of the other money, like we talked about, is 5-year balloons, right? So every 5 years you're refinancing. So if you have one buddy, for example, and you guys want to gather up a down payment and both be on the title and one person be on the mortgage, now you can take advantage of the lending where one person...
You better have a airtight operating agreement.
One person can be on the first mortgage and both people can be on the title, and the next building, the second person can be on the mortgage and both people on the title.
Can I do a very brief, boring explanation as to why? Do you want me to do it?
Sure, go ahead.
So essentially what you're getting at is instead of buying this property, you and me, in an LLC, we're still going to have an operating agreement that's going to dictate how we're going to do this. But you're going to buy the first building we find under your own name. So you could take advantage of getting a fixed interest rate, 30-year mortgage.
Yes.
So now we have a lower monthly payment. We have a lower interest rate. We know we're not going to have to refinance in 5 or 10 years. We've just house hacked. Literally, that's the definition of house hacking. Really good point. And then our agreement would be, hey, next time, Joey, since I already used my personal purchase on this one, you're going to do it on the next one, but we're still going to be 50-50 partners. I kind of rolled my eyes and made a comment. That makes our operating agreement so much more important because now, granted, we're both going on title, so that we're protected from a certain standpoint, but we no longer share an entity. I think if you do it that way, it has to be like a brother, a sister, or someone that you really, really trust. But I will say that's brilliant. That is really a great way to do it. Because to your point, the difference between 30-year fixed at 4.5 versus a 5.1 ARM, 5.5, 6, and then you're going to have to refinance it. Who knows what it looks like in 5 years? That monthly payment becomes pretty significantly different, right?
You're reducing your risk of interest rates increasing in the future, right? Yeah. So for the next 30 years, if the rent's $1,000, what's it going to be in 15 years, right? Can you get a 3% inflation increase on rent year over year, stacking for 15 years?
We would assume yes.
Fixed rate, right? So what happens if at year 5 you have a 3% interest rate, and what are rates right now? 6.5%.
Right.
You're ballooning, and it could be.
I try not to look now. I'm waiting until everyone runs through these doors celebrating and says, "We're back to 3s and 4s."
They've come down a little bit, but.
Okay, but wait, James, what if we get a fixed interest rate and we don't like that? Like it's 6.5 right now. I don't want to lock myself into that.
You can refinance.
We're still allowed to refi if we get a better rate, but no one could ever force us to take a worse rate.
A lot of investment money has prepayment penalties. Owner-occupant loan isn't going to have a prepayment penalty. So the fees to refinance a fixed rate as an owner-occupant is going to be much less than an LLC loan as an investor.
Yeah, this has been awesome. I really think what you are doing and helping these folks with is we're taking house hacking. We're like really house hacking now, perfectly legally, by the way, manipulating every single factor that we can, right? So you're taking it. It's not just as simple as, oh, we're going to buy a house and live in one and then we'll sell it. It's like, no, we're going to take advantage of the financing, possible partnership opportunities, with all the way down to which unit is smarter to live in. So you've really got this down.
You know,
science.
Something else like I do that might not be, and I don't know how you feel about this, but like on my personal 3-flat that I house hack, I depreciate as well. And that depreciation offsets some of the income, right? You might not necessarily depreciate an asset that you are planning on owning on the short term or something that you own personally. I kind of do two things. I have this 30-year outlook that we talked about earlier on, right? I'm never going to sell it. And it's an investment tool that I live in. So I'm depreciating it as well, which increases the cost basis. Not to like get too deep into it, but I'm also a real estate professional, so it offsets income, right? So it's doing two things. It's offsetting my personal income, and if there is enough depreciation, and it's offsetting the building's income. So living there, living for free, I'm also not paying taxes on the excess cash flow because I'm depreciating an asset that I have a long-term outlook. You might not do that if you house hack and you need that down payment to then go buy your single-family home.
I joke with people in here all the time, including yourself, about analysis paralysis. This is like analysis. When I say analysis paralysis, I mean you're looking for reasons not to do something. You are taking a real estate investment tool and you're like squeezing all the juice out of it. That's where I love real estate. That's where I think even our doctors, lawyers, teachers, unemployed friends that want to get into real estate investment, like that's why you come in here and you talk to Chris, you talk to James, you talk to Alex, you talk to Ben, you talk to me, you talk to Mara, whoever else is out there. Everyone has like a different way to squeeze the lemon, and you really have all the ways to squeeze the lemon.
Practice what you preach, right?
I don't. I just live in my nice rental apartment.
Yeah, but you own real estate.
I do.
You own real estate investment property, so.
Okay, I want to do one more topic here before we wrap up. This is not a new topic. I pretty much talked to everyone about this, but another really popular question that I get asked, and you do too, is I want to do my first investment property. I want to start looking at places making offers, but I don't want it to be my only one. I don't want it to be my last one. How do you look at taking your first leap, your first step into real estate investment while also looking forward? So you're not a one and done. Your Roscoe Village property won't be your last investment property.
If you want to get into real estate investing, the number one tool would be house hacking. If you don't want to house hack because you don't want to live above your tenants, or you don't want to sacrifice bedroom size or something else along those lines, I think you should look at single family homes, and you can Google Burr. Do you know what Burr is?
Former U.S. president, no?
Burr is buy, rehab, rent, refinance. And if you can do Burr on your very first investment property on a single family home, which means that your total cost, your purchase plus your rehab, is at or less than the debt amount that the bank is going to lend to you in the future. So if you buy it for $40,000 and you rehab it for $40,000, that's an $80,000 total cost, hard cost. Let's just use those rough numbers. So if your total cost is $80,000 and then the property is worth $100,000, and the bank is willing to lend you 80% of $100,000, your bank debt is going to be equal to your total cost.
You've burred.
And that is the best.
Rehabbed,
rent,
and refinanced. And essentially what you're saying is you have created, through that process, you have created an equal amount of equity. You have added an equal amount of value to the amount of equity needed by the long-term mortgage holder, the bank. So you've basically created value.
Created enough value
Yeah.
that the bank's debt, once you refinance, is equal or less than the total cost.
Yeah.
And that then allows you to buy one and then have the money that you had for the down payment to purchase it to recycle to buy another.
Go do it again. Here's the problem, James. We're not in a very burr-friendly environment right now, are we? Yeah. So that's why you see a lot of people sitting out. I was a huge fan of the burr. I thought I would burr my way to fame, fortune, and early retirement.
To the beach.
To the beach, correct. Turns out, no. Interest rates can throw a wrench into burr. So here's how I want to pivot. Everyone knows we're construction people, we're value add people. What if they're not? What if our friends, and they don't want to necessarily partner with us, which would be the best option, but if they didn't, then what do? They just love the idea of owning real estate, and they don't, then what do we do? James, we don't have the ability to totally renovate and cash out. And all
I mean, if you're more liquid and you don't want to get into the nitty gritty of creating value, you can do a 20% down payment on a turnkey property.
Boring. That's for rich people, James.
Yeah, but you get some leverage, you let it cash flow, and if you take care of it, it's going to take care of you.
How about this? How can we add value without construction?
Increasing the rents, decreasing the expenses.
I think this is one of the most underrated refi strategies out there, and tell me if I'm missing something. But if James, if you're my broker and I ask you to find me, I say, this is my strategy. I don't want to do any construction. I don't trust contractors. It's too much risk, but I still want to add value to a building. And then 2 years from now, I really want to refinance and try to get some money back.
Here's one of the easiest things to do. Let's say you buy a 6 flat. If you don't hire a property management company, you're going to collect 6% more rent than the person that hires the property management company.
Okay.
One of the easiest ways of just reducing your expenses.
You better be ready to actually manage. Okay, tell another one.
Maybe you purchase something that has high real estate taxes. You could take on the risk of trying to fight those taxes, right? So if you lowered your taxes, you're going to have a higher ROI. A big one too, sorry to cut you off.
It's okay.
Again,
I want more ideas.
Changing the responsibility of utilities. So if you buy a boiler building, you go from having a gas account to individual furnaces or individual heat within
not a
unit.
huge project.
Not a huge project. You eliminate this gas bill, and then now the tenants or the occupants are going to be paying their own.
All you're talking about is just trying to change the equation, change the NOI, the net operating income equation, lower your expenses, right? So lowering expenses is one way to create a greater NOI, which then could lead to a refinance opportunity, right? If you could prove to the bank that the equation has changed a little bit. Another way is to raise rents, sounds, it's kind of like keep it simple, stupid, but I'm pretty simple. So if I say, James, find me an asset that's being under-managed, under-leased.
Under-managed, or
there's plenty of them out there, right? But it takes someone with knowledge of the area and and with a background in this like yourself to go not only just say, okay, beautiful brick building, decent looking units. Then what you're going to do is slide down and look at the data in the MLS or Redfin or Zillow or Compass and say, okay, these are collecting $1,450 a month. When do their leases expire, right? Okay, their leases all expire in June. All these other investors are looking at this building like it doesn't make enough money. You see, okay, let's get these people out or give them an opportunity to pay market rent.
So, maybe they've been there a long time and, the current landlord has a low cost basis, his or her has, a lower cost basis, right? So maybe that landlord has decided not to increase the rents, right? Because they're completely comfortable, the people are paying on time. You could come in and you could be the new sheriff, right?
Yep.
And you can turn the building. You could keep, if they're great tenants, you keep them.
Yep.
And you could give them a slight bump.
Yep.
Right? And that's going to increase your bottom line.
Yeah.
And now if you put all this stuff together, right? You increase the rents, you decrease the expenses, you self-manage. You're going to have a way different investment property than someone else.
Yeah, maybe we don't call that house hacking, but it's definitely hacking. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
You're stretching from all ends. That's when real estate gets exciting. And you've seen me, like, I haven't mastered that yet, right? But I think if there's folks out there that want to get into real estate investment and you only have one asset to do it with, and you have help like ours or other professional help, the opportunity in real estate investment is still something that I don't know where else you find the ability to manipulate that many different factors and create income producing.
There's no other investment type where a bank will lend you money. You can't go to a bank and say, lend me $100,000 to buy Apple stock. But you can go to a bank and you can ask for $100,000 to buy an income producing property.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Damn, I feel like going and finding something new to buy now. Cool. All right, well, thank you all for joining us. Another successful episode of House Hacking with Halperin. James, amazing talking with you as always. I highly recommend anyone out there, if I'm not your vibe or your flavor, reach out to James. This guy has more investment knowledge and just real estate knowledge in general, just about up there with anyone I've met. James, this was fun. Let's do it again.
Let's definitely do it again. Thank you for the invitation. It was great.
We covered house hacking. We covered investment. We covered nudie mags. We kind of Burr. We kind of touched on all the important items today. Thank you guys. Call us if you have any questions.